Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Practice Transformation Academy Orientation webinar. And a big congratulations to each and every one of you for being accepted into the Academy. My name is Julia Shriver, and I'll be your moderator today. I am a project manager at the National Council for Behavioral Health. I'm joined today by Kate Davidson, Assistant Vice President at the National Council for Behavioral Health, and also Emily Transu, Samantha Zimmerman, and J.D. Fisher of Washington State Healthcare Authority. To note, the slides and the recording will be posted on the hub for your convenience to access whenever you need them. The Practice Transformation Academy is brought to you by a few different partners: Washington State Department of Health, Qualis Health, Washington Council for Behavioral Health, and National Council for Behavioral Health. Before we begin, I would like to address a few different logistics. We will be doing each introductions today, so each of you will have a chance to speak. We will unmute you when it is your turn. If you do not have audio set up, please be prepared to type your response in the chat box, and if you have any additional questions, you can also submit them through the chat box, and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. For today's agenda, we'll be doing a brief overview of value-based payments. Then we will go into the Practice Transformation Academy program structure. We'll also do a few introductions of the National Council faculty, as well as participating organizations and leads. Then we'll jump into what is a stretch project, Practice Transformation lead, and value-based payment steering committee. We'll go over the assessment tool that we'll be using, and some information about the kickoff meeting. Now I would like to pass over to Samantha Zimmerman from the Healthcare Authority to give you a brief overview of the Healthier Washington Practice Transformation Support Hub.
Hey, so this is Emily Transu. I'm the Associate Medical Director at Healthcare Authority, and I'm going to speak a little bit to the hub, since this is sort of one of the groups that's helping to sponsor this work and has played a really important role in supporting transformation efforts throughout the state. So the Practice Transformation Hub, I always like to give it its full title because there's also the Pathways Hub and other hubs out there, is part of the State Innovation Model, the SIM grant that the state of Washington has been running for the last 3 years. It's a total of a 4-year program. And that created the hub, which is a partnership really between Healthcare Authority and the Department of Health. And it has 3 primary components, which are run through 3 different contracts. So 2 of those are with Qualis Health. One for providing practice coaching and another for providing regional connectors to providers. Then there's also a web resource portal that's offered in partnership with the UW Department of Family Medicine Primary Care Innovation Lab. So basically these are 3 arms of an effort to really provide information and technical assistance to providers as they're going through this transformation. So it provides both access to resources and also individual coaches and connectors who can work with practices to help them figure out what their needs are in transformation and how to get those needs met. We'll go on to the next slide. So the goals, they've had a couple of areas of particular focus, and one has really been around the integration of physical and behavioral health. Another has been helping providers move from volume-based to value-based care, obviously the topic of our conversation today. And then the third pillar has been to improve overall population health through improving clinical and community linkages. So each of these things are kind of connecting into this goal of connecting better care, smarter spending, healthier people and communities, which of course, as we all know, is the triple aim. And I would really call out the quadruple aim in all of this too, the fourth side of that being provider satisfaction and engagement. So all of those I think are really important, and the goal has been to support all of those. Go on to the next slide. I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, but really kind of, you can look at this later. It goes through different areas where the hub is supporting people in the different components that they need to be successful in practice transformation. That includes building a set of skills that are needed, really developing a roadmap and a plan for each practice to get from where it is to where it wants to be. As I mentioned, integration of physical and behavioral health in both directions, physical into behavioral health services and behavioral into physical health services, improving outcomes, which includes the ability to measure and build quality improvement capacity, managing population health, so really thinking not just about the patient in front of you, but about the whole group that you're responsible for, and really leveraging enhancing community connections. We all know that the work that we do in healthcare is only a small part of really being able to transform and improve people's lives, and many of us working especially with the Medicaid population, and all of you working especially with the behavioral health side of things, know that what's happening outside the office is so much more important than what's happening inside. So really increasing the ability to connect with resources in the community to make a difference for folks. So that's kind of what the Practice Transformation Hub is about. And we can get back to more of those details later on in the presentation.
Thanks so much, Emily. I want to introduce myself. My name is Kate Davidson. I'm an Assistant Vice President for Practice Improvement with the National Council. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am and the team here at National Council is to be working with all of you at this really exciting time. And I'll give a little bit more of a background a little bit later in the presentation today about the National Council team and the experience that we're bringing to this, and about kind of what makes us really excited about transformation and the efforts that are going on in Washington. So I wanted to start us with maybe a little bit of a funny cartoon. It's daunting that the world as we know it right now with medical reimbursement is literally changing so rapidly. And so while that's scary, I think the exciting piece of that is it's going to take every single one of us to be a part of the solution and define what the landscape is going to look like in the next few years. And so that's exciting because we have a place at the table. Behavioral health has a place at the table in a very important way. So I want to be talking about both what are the things you can do today to prepare for transformation down the road, so that it's not quite as scary and not quite as daunting as it sometimes may seem. So in that same vein, I want to talk about what the spectrum is in terms of payments. Briefly, we'll go over a lot of this when we meet next week in Washington. But if you can take here a look at this slide, this is really a spectrum of what we're looking at. So traditional fee-for-service being on one end with minimal risk to zero risk, and then all the way down to full risk or full capitation. And so the important thing that I want folks to focus on within this particular graphic is that there are a lot of phases in between. And so you're not expected to go from fee for service all the way to full risk tomorrow or even in the next year or so. And I think this next graphic highlights that as well. If you can take a look at where we are currently with that very big orange ball in category 1, where we've got a lot of providers who are currently operating in a fee-for-service world. And then you take a look at where we're going. We still do have a lot of folks that are getting a rate for a service that they're providing. However, you can also see that many folks are getting a bonus for quality of services and potentially are entering into at-risk contracts as well. But again, this is where we're moving, and this is going to take us over time. But it's not expected that all of our providers are going to be in full risk contracts with payers. So if you take a look at in the next few years, 2019 and onward, what some of the maximum and minimum adjustments are going to look like. At the very maximum, by 2019, you're going to have about a 4% increase and potentially with a 4% risk. And then that will continually, gradually grow over time to about a 9% bonus incentive and a 9% disincentive payment. And so when you're thinking about that, that gives us a lot of time to gradually prepare for these shifts in the next several years. So I think the big question out there right now for everyone, the question that's looming is, what is value? What is it going to look like? And at the very essence of value in general, it is quality over cost. But then when you break that down to further pieces and you start to ask yourself, well, what does quality mean? It puts you back in the driver's seat. As providers, it puts you in the driver's seat because you are defining, A, what populations and what subpopulations you are serving, and what quality means for them. And then when you go down to the denominator, when you're thinking about cost, you ask yourself the same questions. What are the services that I'm providing, and what are the populations and the subpopulations that I'm serving? And so so value as a system might be this larger, more nebulous piece, but when you're thinking about what is it that I need to do to define quality as a provider, this is a different way of looking at it that makes it a little bit less daunting again. So I'm going to pass it back over to the Healthcare Authority and to Emily, and to talk a little bit about what that means for Washington State, and then I'll come back around and talk to you guys again in the next few minutes. Emily?
Thanks so much. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the state's take on these topics, and really thinking about aligning value-based payment across different programs, different providers, different payers. One of the things that we are really sensitive, and I'm sensitive to, having spent 15 years as a primary care doc, is the importance that everybody really be pulling fundamentally in the same direction. If you've got a totally different set of rules to follow for one group of your patients or one of your payers, and something really different is happening elsewhere, obviously it becomes overwhelming and not fruitful. And so one of our goals is to really try to all work together to achieve these same efforts. We can go on to the next slide. So this is just a little bit of a roadmap of the Healthcare Authority's goals for the state in terms of purchasing. So our goal is that by 2021, 90% of state purchase care, so that includes Medicaid and public employee benefits, will be in some kind of a value-based arrangement, and 50% of commercial care will in the state. And there are some interim goals in between. We've done really well with the 2017 goals. There's a lot of progress being made. And bear in mind that 1 of 3 Washingtonians under Medicare age is in either public employee benefits or Medicaid. So this is a lot of people. Go on to the next slide. And this aligns with the federal goals. So here you see Washington State on the left with kind of what our goals are over time, and then Medicare has similar goals over time for increasing the amount of value-based payment within its programs. So we are not alone in doing this. The federal government is committed to this as well. We can go to the next slide. So we spoke a little bit earlier to kind of these different value-based categories, and this may be familiar to a lot of you, but I think it's important to spend a little bit of time on what these categories are and kind of what they mean for you as providers. So this is kind of the official federal framework, which we also use in Washington for these definitions. So category 1 is just fee-for-service. You do something, you get paid for it, very transactional, no link to quality or cost. The old medicine, as it were, for many of us. Category 2, service with a link to quality and value. So that can be payment for infrastructure and operations. So you're putting together a new program to do integration and get reimbursement for making that structural change within your provider group. There can be pay for reporting, so paying you to start tracking and reporting on quality results. And then rewards for performance, so actually getting paid based on what those quality results are. And then the next level is to have both rewards and penalties for performance. And you'll see sort of a theme in all of this, that one level is you just get paid more if you do well, and then another level is you get paid more if you do well and you get paid less if you do poorly. So category 2, still very transactional in terms of the way you take care of people, but with these sort of added bonuses and potentially penalties based on how you're doing with quality. Category 3 starts to move into an alternative payment model. So the APM there stands for alternative payment model. Still kind of built on that fee-for-service infrastructure, but building in some rewards around cost as well. So upside gain sharing, kind of saying, if you take efficient care of this group of patients and you do good quality and you also spend less money than you would have been expected to, you get to share some of that. So if you figure out some innovative ways that you can keep people out of the hospital, keep people out of the ER, you get to share in that benefit. And then the other is the potential for, again, upside and downside risk. And typically, as you can imagine, the upsides are higher when you take the downsides as well. And then category 4 really moves into population-based payment. So either a condition-specific population-based payment, here's a group of people, take care of their behavioral health needs, and we'll give you a certain amount of money to do that, or total population-based payment, here's a group of people, take care of them and pay for it. So essentially shifting the traditional insurer role into the provider's hands. And both of those, again, come with requirements around quality. A category that's not in here, there's also a 4N, which is kind of just capitation without a set of quality requirements. And that's actually not considered to be a value-based payment. That's a form of payment arrangement, but it's not value-based because it's not looking at quality. Go on to the next slide. So of those 4 categories, when we say 90%, 50% in value-based purchasing, the definitions of those are here. It's anything from 2C onward up to 4B. And I really want to call out here that this is not a one-size-fits-all. And as was mentioned earlier, people aren't going to just jump into, let's do capitation now, and you're supposed to be ready to do that by next year. But also, you may never want to do that. It's going to depend on your population, your care model, where in this you want to fall. So not only do you not have to get to the right bottom side of this graph in a specific time frame, but for different groups, it will make sense to go that far or not go that far, and all of that is okay. So anything that is at least at that stage where you're getting rewarded for your performance with a population kind of counts under this model, if you will. Although again, the one, if you were capitated but didn't have a quality measurement piece of that, that wouldn't. And I know that that's an arrangement that some people are used to being paid under. So another piece is that how you get from where you are to here is going to depend a lot on where you are to start with, and that's as it should be. We'll go on to the next slide. So some really driving common elements in all of this. All of these pieces are really driven by data. You can't speak to cost and you can't speak without having good actionable data to work on. A couple of sort of key pieces to that data or what's done with that data. We really try in Washington to align with the statewide common measure set, which is a group of measures that have been agreed on for this purpose. There are 57 of them total. Bear in mind that that covers the full spectrum of population health. So not all will be applicable by any means to any given group. But rather than having one insurance company picking one set of measures and another picking another, and Medicare is doing this and you're trying to answer to all these things, we really try to keep them closely aligned. We really try to keep the care transformation models based on evidence, and a lot of that is work that has been done by the BRE Collaborative in terms of looking at what's evidence-based and how to do good integration, what's evidence-based and how to do good care of opioid use disorder. So we really try to align with their recommendations. And we really try at the top there to align with the federal work. So that's why the LAN framework, which is the federal one, is part of this. We try to align with MACRA on the Medicare side. And then the HCA's quality improvement model, which we won't go into in detail today, but that's a really neat system. One of the problems we often encounter in thinking about value is it where you get to, or is it how far you move? So if you start from a place where you're really struggling and haven't been doing this, do you say you have to get to the 50th percentile or the 90th percentile to be rewarded? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And on the other hand, if you've been doing it for a long time and working hard and you're at the 90th percentile, you don't want to just be judged on how much better you get. So the quality improvement model really takes both of those into account, essentially looking at where you're starting out and where you get to. And the better you do, the more it depends on performance, and the lower you start, the more it depends on how you improve. Next slide. So how is this actually playing out in Washington? I'm going to speak to some stuff with the MCOs and also with provider contracts. So in terms of HCA's contract with the Medicaid managed care organizations, HCA withholds 1% of that total premium. So 1 cent on every dollar that we pay them, we withhold, and then they have the opportunity to earn that back, depending on their quality performance and also on their implementing value-based arrangements with providers. The quality piece is based on 7 quality measures from the statewide common measure set. These can shift a little bit over time as things become more and less relevant. And I'd call out that some of those are HEDIS measures around antidepressants. So there is a behavioral health component to that set. In the fully integrated managed care regions, there are some additional measures that have been shown to connect to behavioral health quality. So there's a measure around substance use disorder treatment penetration, essentially how able people are to connect to care if they need it. Same thing for mental health. Substance use disorder treatment initiation and engagement. So if someone's identified with a substance use disorder, how likely are they to get treatment and then to continue with that? And then there's an all-cause hospital readmission rate. And it's been shown that when people have better mental health care and better integrated care, they're much less likely to bounce back into the hospital. So that's another measure within that. And I call these out because the managed care organizations are getting paid based on these. And so if you can help them do well, then they've got a good reason to pay you for helping them do well, essentially. And as we move into more and more fully integrated managed care over the next few years, you're in a really important position of power as providers. They need you to get to these goals. And essentially, this whole value-based payment model is about getting paid to do the work that really needs to be done to make your patients healthy. So on to the next slide. How is this playing out again now in practical terms? More of these examples will come from the physical health side because a lot of it so far is going through the MCOs, and obviously because of the BHOs, that's been kind of separated from the behavioral health providers. There are a lot of capitation or partial capitation arrangements in behavioral health, but fewer of them so far have been connected into quality. So again, if this feels like I'm a little bit giving examples from physical health, it's because they've been better developed, but these are the kinds of models that I think you can anticipate would be opportunities for behavioral health providers going forward. So a lot of these things are already happening. So there are out there, for example, incentives for practice changes. CHPW, for example, has a collaborative care and behavioral health integration incentive. So practices that are moving forward with this and putting the investments that they need to create these systems are being rewarded for that. There are a lot of upside incentives for quality out there. So that kind of pay for performance. If your depression patient, patients diagnosed with depression are coming back at good rates for their follow-up care and staying on their medications, then you can get a reward for that. There's also a lot of shared savings tied to quality out there in the marketplace already. So provider groups that are saying, we think that we can, make an investment in someone to outreach to our sicker patients, and we think we can keep them out of the hospital and save money and get some of that saved money back to finance those efforts. There's a lot of that going on out there. There's also upside and downside risks. So there are provider groups that have been building toward this for a long time and feel comfortable saying, we are so sure that we can save this population money by taking better care of them, that we are comfortable being in an arrangement where if that didn't happen, we would lose money, but if it does happen, we gain more. And then there are also capitation arrangements out there as well. More often, these are in bigger systems that can get more sort of comprehensive angle on things. For me as a primary care doc, it's hard for me to be responsible for a patient's total cost of care. If they have a heart attack and go to the hospital, I don't have any control over what happens with them. But if I'm a hospital system that also has all sorts of specialties, it's easier for me to say, yeah, I can be responsible for the whole shebang. So all of these things are already happening and will continue to happen. There's a lot of models out there. MCOs are getting pretty used to doing these arrangements, and I think that will be a benefit in some ways as behavioral health comes into more of this, to not be the first test wave of some of this work. The next slide. So considerations for providers in all of this, things to think about. The potential benefits really do tend to increase as risk increases. What arrangement is going to be best for you will depend on your strengths and your capabilities, and that will change over time. This is it's not one size fits all, but it's not the jeans you wore in high school will fit you now. It's probably a bad example, but you will become better at this over time and may feel comfortable moving into different kinds of arrangements. And again, that's the way this ought to be. There will be increased opportunities in all of this. So on the MCO side, for example, that 1% withhold will gradually go up to 3%. There will be a lot of opportunities here. There are certain capabilities, and this will all be discussed more over time in this academy, but certain capabilities are really critical to value-based purchasing. So those include the ability to work on a population scale, to know who all your patients are, to have things like registries of who are the people who need special outreach, who are the people that we really need to be tracking, how do we look at this data to know how we're doing and how we can improve our efforts. Those are really key capabilities kind of across the board in these arrangements. And really the challenge in front of you will be to figure out what your strengths are and then to gradually build those capabilities. And at any given time, think about arrangements that are going to be beneficial for you based on what you know how to do and what you're good at. Next slide. So that's kind of our take on all of this. We look forward to talking with all of you more. This has some links to our paying for value sort of information out there, and feel free to reach out to any of us at any time with thoughts and questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Emily. We actually did have one question come in. It was when you were talking about the clinical quality measures. Someone asked, can you go over what care means?
That's a broad one. One of the challenges in all of this is really to take big, broad concepts and turn them into a limited set of measures for tracking. And that's not to say that those measures are by any means the only important thing. And in some ways, it's sort of the idea, and there's good data behind this, that if people develop those capabilities, everything is going to get better, including the measures that you're not actually tracking. So when I think about what's better mental health care overall, we could have an hour's conversation on that topic, but I think it has to do with really being patient-centered, meeting people where they are, helping them toward their goals, looking at all of the different components of what's keeping them from being where they want to be in life and addressing those. In terms of some of the really specific metrics that are tracked, for now, those include things around depression management, whether people are improving, whether people are staying with treatment until their symptoms are resolved, whether people who are identified as having a substance use disorder get treatment for that, get connected to care. One of the things I'd call out is that metrics are constantly evolving and getting better, and that's partly because our ability to measure some things that feel really important improves over time. Say on depression, the older metrics are all just about, do you stay on meds? And now there are metrics being introduced that really have to do with, are you getting to a point where your PHQ-9 is better and we can say your depression is controlled? So these things get better and better over time. Again, you sort of have to start with what you're able to look at that is meaningful and then get more and more meaningful as all of our capabilities improve.
Great, thank you, Emily. Now I'm going to pass it back over to Kate to go into a little bit more detail about the Practice Transformation Academy.
Thanks so much, Julia and Emily. So several takeaways from your presentation, Emily, that I appreciated. And I think one that stands out is this idea of alignment. So alignment with what Washington State is doing and alignment with what's happening nationally. And so you talked about some of CMS's goals. And one of the things that is happening across the country is an initiative called the Transforming Clinical Practices Initiative. And the goal of TCPI, or Transforming Clinical Practices, is to prepare providers across the country, both primary care as well as specialty, to be able to enter into value-based payment contracts in the next, now remaining 2 years of the initiative. And so that very much aligns with the goals of Washington State and the goals for you all as providers. And so National Council is the prime for one of those, and is the recipient of one of those grants. And we help organizations both in New York State, but also helping our sister networks across the country to prepare behavioral health organizations as they prepare to enter into value-based payment contracts. And we use a framework or a blueprint to do that. And everybody is step line working together across the country using this framework that we call a change package. And you can see here that it is aligned to the triple aim, which is also aligned with what Emily was talking about, although she did reference the quadruple aim, which I would say is really evidenced in this very initiative of trying to really support providers to prepare for VBPs. And so you can see that there's 3 primary drivers: patient and family-centered care design, continuous data-driven quality improvement, and sustainable business operations. You're going to hear this as our use of the change package as a drumbeat message throughout the next several months. And the goal there is to support folks. You guys are embarking upon transformational change. And the funny thing about transformational change is that you don't necessarily have a clear idea of what that is going to look like for your organization. But yet at the same time, you can't wait for the system changes to happen. And so much like Emily was talking about, everybody must be working together collaboratively. And so this really to help you to identify where are the areas that you need to be focusing in on as a provider, as an organization, so that you are prepared to shift as your system around you shifts as well. Next slide, please. And so the goals of this academy are really to build readiness for value-based payment arrangements. So to ensure that folks have a really clear, concrete plan with targeted timelines so that they are preparing for value-based payment and readiness over time. to cultivate strategic internal champions for value-based payment arrangements. This is a journey. You're going to hear us saying that a number of times today and over the course of the next couple of months. And so you need someone who is sort of your anchor within your organization, potentially several people that are anchors within your organization, so that when you feel like you're moving off target, those folks really have the end in mind and have an idea, may not have a clear, may go through a questioning process, but really are the champions for we can do this. And then ultimately to contribute to the larger goals of Healthier Washington, which means that we're supportive of ensuring that Washington State is able to meet their goals of tying 90% of Medicaid claims to value in some way by 2021. And so in terms of program structure, what can you expect in the next couple of months? So the program is going to be running from October to the end of January. We are excited to have our first one-on-one or one in-person meeting workshop next week. We also are going to have 4 informational webinars. And something that I'm excited about that we're doing a little bit differently this time is 2 group coaching calls. And so what we've heard from from folks who have participated in similar academies that we've done across the country is that they really enjoy learning from the other providers. And so toward the end, when folks have really gotten a lot of, people are going to be getting together with their coaches and then talking through progress that they've made across the life of this, of the academy. You'll also have the opportunity to do stretch project planning, which I'll get into what stretch projects are a little bit in a few more slides. And then we're going to make sure that everyone has the tools and resources and that they are all in one centralized area, which is going to be in your hub. And we're going to be modifying. We have a lot of planning guides that we've created for the national audience as well as other audiences, and we're going to be really modifying that to meet the needs for Washington State so that you have a really clear idea of where you're going, and then also using a tool to assess your progress over time. So in terms of program outcomes, what we commit to you is that by the end of this academy, that you will have a better understanding of value-based principles and models in behavioral health that are consistent with the value-based payment roadmap and moving Apple to health value. We commit to you that we would like to cultivate buy-in among your internal agency stakeholders, so supporting you guys in problem solving with some of those softer issues, some of those more nuanced issues with trying to get staff buy-in within your provider agency. And supporting the establishment of a VBP steering committee. So identifying a practice transformation lead and helping you to create the structures within your organization so that you can be nimble and flexible in this very transitional time that we're talking about now. And identifying a value-based payment initiative that's aligned with one or more project metrics found in the Medicaid Transformation Project Toolkit. So that's going to be tied to your stretch project, and again, I think that this is really going to come together. We'll talk a little bit about it in a couple of slides, but next week on the 20th when we all meet, I think that'll really come together as well. One more. Also defining and collecting baseline data for a key value metric, and I think that also hits on what Emily was talking about, is really trying to identify metrics that we're using that will both you can use to improve the quality around that one metric, but also identifying process metrics that might be around that so that you are improving other process measures along the way. So we've pulled together a really great team, I think, from National Council, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm so excited about all of this, but also I want to talk about the team that we've pulled together. We have areas, I think complementing areas in value-based payment arrangements and system drivers, developing evaluation and quality improvement strategies to strengthen large systems, We've got folks that have expertise in integrating health, program management and clinical design, Medicaid financing, data-informed decision-making, and community behavioral health population and practice environment. So for our core faculty from National Council, we have myself. I'm Kate Davidson. I'm an assistant vice president with policy and practice improvement. You know, before coming to National Council, I was both a clinician and then an administrator for many years, and actually in the state of New York, where I was involved in DSRIP and continue my involvement in DSRIP with the Transforming Clinical Practices Initiative, where I designed the technical assistance for the grants that National Council primes. But in addition to that, I have experience with integrating primary care within a behavioral health setting. And I think one of the things that gets me most excited about this is the idea of using metrics to drive clinical practice. I think it's an area that is so much fun and really has an opportunity to change the culture within organizations, to make people excited about their work again when they start to see the amazing successes that they have. And so I'm excited to do that with folks, to talk about risk stratification, population health, and care pathways, and all of these things, and to really start to get some fun stuff into place. But in addition to that, we have Samantha Holcomb, who is a director of policy and practice improvement. Samantha comes to the National Council with a wealth of experience in global health and supporting countries across the world in maternal health, and so she's got a lot of experience in quality improvement, and then has since then brought that to the behavioral health systems. And Nina Marshall, who has a lot of experience with Medicaid design and in our Medicaid offices here in DC, before coming to National Council, where she continued that passion, and where she runs our Care Transitions Network, as well as our work with the Center for Behavioral Health Innovations and Reform that is funded through SAMHSA. And then our coaches, I'll let Pam introduce herself, but I'll tell you one other coach that we have on is Elizabeth Ahrens. She will be also joining us out next week in Seattle. She also comes from a global health background and has a lot of experience in quality improvement, and we are super excited to have her join us. And Pam, I wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell folks a little bit about your background.
Good, thank you. Looking forward to meeting you all soon. My name is Pam Petrozewski. I'm an integrated health consultant at the National Council, psychologist by training, and I've worked with primary care providers and systems, behavioral health agencies, a lot of work around developing clinical guidelines and evidence-based practices, also measurement-based care for depression. I do a lot of work around SBIRT for risky substance use. And I'm really sold on the idea of quality improvement and how it isn't just one person looking at data, but it's something we all can be reviewing and being impacted by, and having it impact and influence the work that we do. And my real key niche area of interest and where I do a lot of my work is around motivational interviewing and how to both engage and activate that person that comes to see us for care, so that it does influence outcomes and it helps people feel more satisfied and more functional in their daily lives.
Thanks so much, Pam. We're really excited to have you joining us too. So in addition to National Council faculty, folks are super lucky to have the local support. So really on the ground support for through the hub, which are the practice coaches and the regional connectors. And so if there are things that the hub coaches will talk a little bit more about how you can practically use them next week again when we meet on the 20th, but there'll be a huge asset, I think, in helping you navigate some of the more local and regional nuanced questions that you might have. So I'm going to hand it over to Julia to talk through some of the participating agencies, and to also get an opportunity to hear from you guys and hear you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and introduce yourselves so we can be prepared for next week.
Hi, everyone. So there are 20 agencies that were accepted into the Academy for this phase, and there is representation across Washington State. We have agencies representing all 9 ACH regions, and amongst you all, there are a broad range of licensure. So most of you are dually licensed agencies, that is 18. One is substance use disorder only agency, and one is mental health only agency. So now we'd like to give you all a little bit of a chance to let us learn more about you. I'm going to run through and unmute you as you're listed here. If you could just give us your name, title, where you're coming from, and a little bit of information about what brought you here today. It looks like Craig from Catholic Charities is not on, but Craig, feel free to send a message to the chat box if you're attending with somebody else. So we will jump over to Mary from Catholic Community Services. Mary, if you'll just give me one moment to unmute you. I'm sorry, and Stephanie will be speaking today.
Hi.
Stephanie, you're unmuted.
Hi, this is Mary Stone Smith. I'm here with Stephanie, and we should have Dawn Clayton on the phone as well from a Seattle office up north. We provide services. Well, first, my title is Vice President for Family Behavioral Health, and in the Family Behavioral Health system of Catholic Community Services, we have 12 different offices, 11 in Washington and 1 in Oregon. And our offices are located from King County south, and then Dawn Clayton is up in King County providing services for adults. And then we also have some adult-based services in Tacoma and in Grays Harbor. So our family behavioral health sites are in Tukwila. We have 2 in Pierce. We've got one in Kitsap, Thurston, and Mason, and Aberdeen, Grays Harbor County, and in Southwest. And also Shelton and Yelm, we have little offices. So we provide services that are in-home 24/7, from mobile crisis, children's mobile crisis, through stabilization, through wraparound with intensive services, and then a variety of services through child welfare. Does that give you a little bit of what you were looking for?
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Mary.
Great.
Okay, and now I'd like to introduce Mandy from Children's Home Society of Washington. Mandy, if you'll give me one moment. You are unmuted.
Hi, this is Mandy with Children's Home Society of Washington. Actually, Libby is probably the best person to speak about this. I'm the Director of Finance, but she's really the person who oversees our behavioral health. I believe she's on the line. I don't know if she's unmuted, though.
I will unmute Libby.
Hi, this is Libby Hine. I'm the Eastern Director for Children's Home Society of Washington. We are a statewide organization located in King County, as well as Pierce, and down in the Vancouver area, Walla Walla, Spokane, and Wenatchee. We provide behavioral health services, including WISE and outpatient for children and families. However, we also have a robust early learning programs throughout the state, adoption, foster care, and many family support programs where we do children's administration work and parenting education.
Thank you so much, Libby.
Does that cover it?
Yep, that's great. All right. It looks like Craig is unavailable, so I'll pass it on to Stacy from Compass Health. You are unmuted, Stacy.
Excellent, thanks. So, and I'm here with Tamara Lesh, who's our CFO as well. And so Compass Health is up in the North Sound region. We cover the 5 North Sound counties. We have a full range of outpatient, intensive, crisis, inpatient services, and we also have a substance use disorder treatment in our smallest county, San Juan. And we're really excited to be participating in this. We've been fairly actively involved, members of our leadership team in the ACH, and we're trying to be very proactive. So we're glad to have this opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stacy. Next, we have Jan Dodd from Frontier Behavioral Health. Oh, you know what, Jan, it looks like you don't have any audio available, and neither does Kelly, so we will switch to Darla from Grant Integrated Services. You are unmuted, Darla.
Good afternoon. This is Darla and Gail from Grant Integrated Services. We serve Grant County. We're both mental health and substance use disorder. What else do we have?
We also do developmental disabilities and have an assisted living facility for people with mental illness. And I'm the Director of Management Services, and Darla is the Director of Administrative Services, which encompasses our financials also.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Lorena from Greater Lakes Mental Health Care. So give me one moment, please. You're unmuted.
Hi there, this is Lorena Clayton from Greater Lakes Mental Health Care, and I'm actually the QA Director and Business Services Director, but I believe that the best person would be to talk a lot more about this would be Terry Card, our CEO.
Terry, you're unmuted.
Hey, hi, this is Terry. We serve, Greater Lakes Mental Health Care serves Pierce County for both mental health services and substance use disorder services. What interested us the most about this is the opportunity to begin to get our infrastructure, our expertise, our experience, our comfort, all aligned with where things are going in terms of value-based payment and contracting. And so, you know, our goal is always to figure out how we can be a solution to the people we serve and the funders. And I think this upcoming change in how we get paid will allow us to align those things really nicely. So Lorena and I are very excited about this, as is the rest of our team, and we're looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Thank you all for the introductions. That ends the first round of introductions. I'm going to hand it back over to Kate, but the rest of you will have an opportunity in a few more minutes to introduce yourselves as well.
Thanks, Julia. So I want to bring this back to do a little bit of level setting around what's expected in this first couple of months of the academy, and where we want to get by the end of January. So as I said before, transformational change is a bunch of sprints that are built into a larger marathon. And so our job to support folks as they're preparing for value-based payment and for systems change and reform is to help you stay narrowed and stay focused. And so the first couple of steps in doing that is to, one, set aims, and then two is to identify metrics and benchmark progress toward accomplishing those aims or those goals. And again, this is consistent with the way that we're thinking about this nationally. It's also consistent with the way that folks are thinking process here that's going on between the national efforts, statewide efforts, and then what you guys are doing as providers. And so building out what your transformation is going to look like by just setting aims at the very beginning so that are consistent with what's happening within your region and within your state. Next slide. And so we're doing that by grounding folks in a stretch project. the purpose of the Stretch Project is to operationalize readiness for value-based payment. You know, I work with a lot of organizations across the country who are all preparing for this payment reform. And I hear over and over again that they almost feel paralyzed and aren't really sure where to start. And so the goal of the Stretch Project is to really ground folks in giving people a really clear place to start their planning. But then also to stretch you beyond your current knowledge and skill sets, right? So both giving people a foundation, but then also with the expectation that they're going to be stretching themselves beyond their means, and that is going to be a part of this transformational effort. And so at the same time, it's really going to challenge your organization to grow in a very different way as well. But the idea is that this Stretch Project is both broad enough that it matches to your state's initiatives, but also tailored to your organization. And so our supports will help you to define your goals and to produce tangible outcomes, things that you can say, we were successful in achieving these things. And so we have the metrics to prove that. So when you think about implementation of this, think about short-term, PDSA, rapid cycle change. We're not talking about being able to clearly within the next couple of months be able to say we've accomplished a reduction in hospitalization rates, but instead we've set up a risk stratification process. We've defined who the populations are that we're currently serving and are able to talk about the types of interventions that we have in place currently in order to serve those populations. That will look like having a kickoff meeting, and during that kickoff meeting, the coaches will help you to define and refine your stretch project. That will happen over the next couple of months, and then strategic support from your faculty coach as well. The practice transformational lead, who will be embedded within your organization, is involved in the day-to-day functions of service and delivery. And so this is the person that is going to really be on the hook for ensuring that you're moving the project forward. That person should have a strong relationship with the C-suite staff, and so that your executive staff should be trusting of that person, and that person should be able to have the ear of folks that they need in order to promote change in the event that they might hit barriers on the program level. They're responsible for communicating mechanisms for change, so being able to then also communicate those changes with staff in a way that resonates with them. So you might be communicating differently with your executive level and differently with your frontline staff in order to promote change. And really, they're the owner of driving change within their organization. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not pulling folks in across the board and across programs and across departments, but really that they're the ones that on a daily basis are thinking about how do I fully integrate the work that I'm doing within this Stretch Project, the skills that I'm learning within this Stretch Project to promote transformational change across my organization. But this person is not in this alone. They have a steering committee that is going to be working very closely with them. And so thinking about how that steering committee is composed, if you think about wanting to include both clinical as well as administrative leadership, thinking about how does this affect everything from my HR department to my finance department to my IT department, wanting to get buy-in across the board. So you should have enough spread within your steering committee that they can really be supportive of all of those different departments. But this strong team is central to your transformation process. So regular communication with them and ongoing communication with them, having meetings that are sanctimony, that you are on a consistent basis attending those meetings, that are decision makers within your organization, and are really tasked with setting the vision for transformation and strategy. We would ask that folks consider inviting all of those people on the steering committee to attend and to participate in coaching calls and webinars. It's going to be very challenging for your transformation lead to communicate all of the details, And what's wonderful is when you have a team of people in a room that are listening to the same thing, everybody walks away with a different nugget or a different something that's important. And so when you have a group that's really charged with leading all of this, it's so much more powerful when everybody brings their own perspective. So now I'll hand it back over to Julia to do a few more introductions.
Thank you, Kate. Next, we have Bill from Evergreen Treatment Services. I'm going to unmute you now, Bill.
Hi, my name is Bill Benham. I'm the Director of Clinical Services at Evergreen. We specialize in substance use disorder treatment, specifically with the use of methadone, Suboxone, buprenorphine. We have about 2,700 patients across the state. We have our main clinic is in Seattle. We have another, our newest clinic is in Renton, one in Olympia, and then down in Grays Harbor. So we're kind of spread across Western Washington, and this was something we were really excited to get involved with because we are a heavily fee-for-service based program, and learning how to drive value and what we do and how what we do relates to healthcare in a broader sense, especially primary care, is important. So we're looking forward to being a part of this.
We're so glad that you are a part of this. Thank you.
Next, we have Stacy from Kitsap Mental Health Services. Stacy, you're unmuted.
Hi. I also think Michelle Blackman, our CFO, is on the call and working with me on this project. We're really happy to be part of it. We are the primary behavioral health service provider in Kitsap Mental Health. We're subcapitated for mental health services and provide the full continuum of care from the DMHPs, inpatient, all the way through to in-home PACT and WISE services from youth through older adults. In Kitsap County, we're opening up a crisis triage unit and a subacute, it changed to residential substance use disorder unit in April. We also have youth and adult ENT services here, along with outpatient. So I think we're poised to do value-based services, being subcapitated already. We are focused on outcomes for the people we work with.
Thank you, Stacy.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It looks like Frank is not on the webinar, but Frank, if you are on here with someone else, feel free to send a message and I can unmute that person. We'll move on to Jeffrey from Multicare Behavioral Health.
Am I unmuted?
Oh, you're unmuted. There you go.
Okay. My name is Jeff Plansich, Multicare Behavioral Health, part of the Multicare Health System. And my title is Director of Behavioral Health Services. And we're located in Puyallup. We're a community mental health center. But our services are both in Pierce County and South King County. We do mental health and substance use disorder treatment. We're co-located in 13 clinics in Pierce County, 3 clinics in South King County. We have an adult psych unit in Auburn, a gero psych unit in Auburn. We have an adolescent inpatient unit in Pierce. You've probably heard we're partnering to do a joint venture, a psychiatric hospital in Tacoma. And we're working on a chemically using pregnant women's unit at Good Sam Hospital. And I guess I'll add that as a behavioral health provider, excuse me, we take pride, we serve Medicaid, Medicare, and all commercial insurance. And my inspiration, we're nervous, even having said all that, we have a lot to learn and we look forward to the help from you guys.
Thank you. We're excited to work with you. Excited to meet you guys in person next week.
I'd like to circle back to Denise from Lourdes. Denise, you are unmuted.
Hey, hi, I'm Denise Clapp. I'm the Vice President of Nursing, the Chief Nursing Officer for Lourdes Health Network. And part of Lourdes, we have a very large behavioral health line serving mainly Benton and Franklin counties. And we're duly licensed. And we have the gamut also of treatment services, inpatient, crisis triage, the DMHPs. We have a group home. Practitioners, a PAC team, So we're pretty excited to have experts helping us get on the path and getting a head start with the Academy. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We're excited as well.
Dawn Brown from Peninsula Behavioral Health. Unfortunately, it looks like your audio is unavailable, but if you are on here with someone else, feel free to send us a message via the chat box. We can also read your introduction out loud. Now we will move on to CMAR Community Health Center. We have Claudia and Mary who sent their introduction via the chat box. We are the Executive Vice President and Vice President for Behavioral Health for CMAR Community Health Centers. CMAR is both an SQHC community health center as well as a licensed community mental health agency. We provide primary care, behavioral health, including both inpatient and outpatient treatment, housing, migrant and homeless services, as well as a host of many other services. We are located in 10 counties in Western Washington and actively participating in 5 ACH regions. We have an integrated model of care that we have been working on improving and expanding for several years, including widening our community-based partnerships. Aside from 28 outpatient mental health and substance use disorder sites and 4 inpatient treatment centers. Thank you both for being here. Next, we have Trina from Sound Mental Health. Katrina, if you'll give me one moment, you are unmuted.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Katrina Egner. I'm the Vice President and Chief Programs Officer at Sound Mental Health in King County. I believe we also have our CEO, Patrick Evans, our CFO, Paul Eisenhower, and Director of Integrated Care, Beth Anderson, are all on the phone. We are located throughout King County. We have offices in Seattle, Bellevue, Redmond, Tukwila, Auburn, and scattered sites throughout the county, providing outpatient mental health and substance use disorder services for children through older adults. We have a large program that works with people coming in and out of the jail and prison system, and we also have 80 residential beds. So we serve about a little over 20,000 people per year, and we're very excited to learn from all of you with the council and also our colleagues across the state. So thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for being here.
Next, we have Melina from Valley Cities Counseling and Consultation. Melina, you are unmuted.
Hi, everyone. This is Melina Stott, Chief Strategy Officer for Valley Cities Behavioral Health. I'm joined today by a number of members from our steering committee and our lead, Lisa Halverson. A little bit about Valley Cities. We are a substance use disorder and mental health treatment agency. We have clinics as far southeast as Enumclaw and as far north as our Meridian Center for Health in Northgate. We have a care model that has a care coordinator at the center, and the focus of the care coordinators to link participants to internal and external services and match appropriate interventions. We have a couple of behavioral health partners, or excuse me, primary care partners in co-located clinics, and we're working on a behavioral health model with our primary care partners as well as data sharing. We have 75 treatment beds coming online at the end of this month. We're developing a process with a focus on care transitions to make sure that people are appropriately placed into outpatient services following their inpatient stay. And then lastly, we were recently awarded the Hub and Spoke grant to offer low barrier buprenorphine treatment in our county, and that successfully launched last month. And my inspiration for this is really to move us forward and help those in greatest need, change our status quo into quality.
You've got a lot going on. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Dawn Brown sent her introduction via the chat box. I'm CFO at Peninsula Behavioral Health. We are a community mental health center in Port Angeles and Sequim. We serve central and eastern Clallam County. On the call today, our medical director, Joseph Rice, and our clinical director, Kathy Stevens. We are super excited to participate in this academy. Welcome.
And we apologize if we messed up any of those words.
Next, from Willapa Behavioral Health, we have Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you are unmuted.
Very good. My name is Elizabeth Limbacher. I'm the interim chief clinical officer at Willapa Behavioral Health. We serve Pacific County. We have 2 clinics, one in Raymond and one in Long Beach, Washington. We have a satellite office that's under construction right now in Ocean Park, Ocean Park. I'm new to the area. I just moved here, so still learning all the places. Our has outpatient mental health as well as SUD. We have a WISE program. We have therapists integrated into the local schools. We are building a DMHP team, and we're also currently working with diversion. And very excited to be on board here. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. We're looking forward to meeting you next week.
Now I'd like to circle back to Graydon from DESC. Great. Graydon, you are unmuted.
Thanks. This is Graydon Andrus. I'm the Clinical Programs Director at DESC. We're kind of an unusual organization in the behavioral health field because we started out as an emergency shelter in 1979 and have built many different components around that. And we currently provide a substantial amount of permanent supportive housing and emergency shelter, and we are licensed in outpatient mental health and SUD services. The volume, our behavioral health services in a given year, we probably serve about 3,400 people, but in different ways. Outpatient mental health, outpatient SUD. We have a large diversion program called Crisis Solution Center, and we've had a long, steady commitment to providing fairly substantial outreach and engagement to the most difficult to engage homeless subset who have major mental illness or substance use. And that's kind of the core of who we serve and have served, is a disengaged, often pretty isolated subset of homeless adults who are not as often looking for service, or if they were, they would have a hard time finding it. So we're very interested in this, both because we realize we need to keep pace with change, but also concerned and interested in discovering ways that organizations providing more specific types of or serving specific populations can have their work acknowledged when we start moving toward metrics that tend to be a little more conventional in nature. Does a system inadvertently disincentivize working with more difficult populations?
Well, thank you for being here, and we look forward to working with you. Last but not least, we have Mary from Yakima Valley Farm Workers Behavioral Health Services. Mary, you're unmuted.
Good afternoon. This is Mary O'Brien. I'm the Clinical Service Director for Behavioral Health here at Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic. And I'm going to pass the baton here to my Program Director, Janice Lubas, who will not be joining us the next time we meet. But again, would like to do the introduction about our services here at Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic.
Hi, this is Janice Lubas. I'm the Director for Behavioral Health Services at Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic. We're a large FQHC. We cover Washington and Oregon. We have about, I think, 22 medical clinics within the 2 states. But our behavioral health services, that is the licensed mental health agency and substance use agency for Washington State for our organization, we only serve Yakima County. So we are a specialty mental health and drug and alcohol program, mainly focusing on children and families. We have a variety of different children's services, including newly licensed applied behavior analysis program, wraparound services, and treatment foster care program. We have a lot of behavioral health consultants and integrated behavioral health within our 2 medical or our 2-state system. We have about 17 behavioral health consultants working in our medical clinics. And the primary care system within Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic really has focused on different or alternative payment methods already in the primary care components of the organization. And my interest is really in having the organization look at specialty mental health and specialty substance use programs and really focusing on that and the development of value-based and alternative payment for our specialized services. And so as a result, we've got managed care department and the quality care department and our information systems department of our overall organization participating in our steering committee. And hopefully we'll be able to have some focus on our specific programming with all of the changes that are happening within the payment structure in the state and national. So we're real happy to be participating in this, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. We're excited to have you participating as well. Chris from Catholic Charities has shared his introductions. We're going to read that aloud. He is the Regional Director for Behavioral Health Services. Catholic Charities provides substance use treatment services, ABA, outpatient mental health services, care management, crisis services, and jail diversion and transitional housing. We provide services in North Central and Greater Columbia. We are in the midst of contracting for services in North Central and planning for healthcare transformation in Greater Columbia. We are excited for this opportunity and the challenges that this will bring. Thank you for being here, Chris. That ends our introductions for now. However, if there is anyone that was not able to share but is indeed here, feel free to send your introduction via the chat box and aloud. It looks like Linda, you might be on to share from, Linda, I'm going to unmute you and let you tell us a little bit about your organization.
Hi, my name is Linda Kruger, Director of Operations for Evergreen Treatment Services, and Bill has already given an introduction for Evergreen, but we are very excited to be part of this and looking at the common metrics and the quality and all of the strategies that we can employ here. So we're glad to be a part of this. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Linda. Again, if there is anyone else that is on the line but did not get a chance to share, feel free to let us know via the chat box. I'm going to pass it back to Kate. Okay, guys, thank you so much for the introductions. We're really looking forward to meeting everyone next week and hearing more about how your transformation efforts are going to really take hold within your organizations. Wanted to talk through a little bit about the tool that we're going to be using, the assessment tool that we're going to be using to assess organizational change over time. And so this was talk about evidence that we're trying to create synergy across national efforts and state efforts. So combining the MHAF, which is built out of the Maine Health Access Foundation, their assessment tool that is being used within the hub, and combining that with the practice assessment tool, which is a tool that CMS created to support organizations toward value-based payment over time through Transforming Clinical Practices initiative. We brought some of those pieces together to create a tool that we're going to be using to track change over time within your organizations and your preparedness for value-based payments. It ties back to those transitions those phases that I talked about earlier. One, setting aims, and two, using data to drive treatment or to drive decision making. And so that's really where we're going to focus most of our efforts within this academy, but you will also be able to use it going forward to look at keeping yourselves on track around several core competencies that will promote your efforts toward transformation. The results will inform and focus your stretch project design, and will also be used with coaching to assess for progress over time. So next week we are all looking forward to meeting you guys on the 20th. During that meeting, it's going to be a full day meeting. We're going to do in the morning a deep dive on value-based payments, as well as putting that in the context of Washington State. We're going to talk about population health management and risk stratification. Those are two of my very favorite topics. And if you recall from Emily's wonderful presentation earlier, those are the things that are in line with the way that Washington State is thinking about how providers can prepare themselves for this systems change as well. We're going to talk about the readiness assessment and do a root cause analysis, as well as, our goal is for after that meeting for you guys to walk away with some foundation for your stretch project and a logic framework that you can use as you bring this back to your larger team and start thinking about what the details of your stretch project are going to be, and then ultimately establishing a VBP steering committee. It's important to note that it will be really, really helpful if you're able to bring your laptop computer, because we'll be also sending you slides throughout and asking folks to potentially present out on any outcomes from the work that you're doing within your groups throughout the day. So expectations are that you guys provide adequate time and energy and enthusiasm to participate in the program. I say that my goal is to help folks to understand how transformation is really a thread that can weave throughout all of your daily work. So this doesn't have to be something that's set aside, but instead, at its core, can be a part of what you're doing within your organization on a daily basis. But we do expect that you consistently attend all applicable program activities, that your transformation lead and your CEO and or a potential other executive lead sponsor attend the kickoff workshop. That's important because, as I alluded to a minute ago, there's going to be a lot of working that goes on between the two of you, between the lead and the executive sponsor. And also, one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten from other academies that we've done in the past is that it's really helpful to ensure that the executive sponsor is on the same page and receiving the same messages that the transformation leads are receiving as well, so that they can support the efforts of transformation over time. That you develop a stretch project, that is something that you give the time and energy to developing. That is something that will be iterative. It is not something that you will walk away from the first meeting and never go back to, but it's something that you will build upon over time.
And that you actively participate in sharing and dissemination of lessons learned, successes and challenges to other program participants and to respective practice transformation steering committees. You know, we do a lot of web-based interaction, and so we'll ask folks to volunteer to talk about the progress that they've made. And what I found is that people really learn from these smaller details, that they are either barriers that they're hitting within their organization or huge successes that they're experiencing as well. So no detail is too small. Please feel free when you're coming to these types of interactions to bring some of that information up so that we can talk those things through, and hopefully so that one of your peers can learn as well. Next slide, please. Expectations of faculty is, you know, we have a commitment to guiding your organization on the path to readiness for value-based payment arrangements. We're committed to providing a tailored support and adapted to the needs of your organization. So, you know, I think the wonderful thing about the coaches and the faculty that we have are that they are really skilled at hearing themes and applying and really adapting our model to meet the needs of your organization. And so we look forward to providing that support to you all. And then also providing effective tools to develop concrete and actionable stretch projects. So, you know, one of the things we're talking about really, really large systems change. There's a lot of concepts that we'll be talking about, and we do a lot of work to try to make the tools that we develop, as well as the steps that we help to support folks make toward progress, are very practical and really promote incremental change over time. So next steps, Monday, today we have the completed transformation assessment. I'm not sure, it might have been, Julia, you tell me where we are with that.
We will be sharing that following the webinar along with the slides and the recording.
Thank you. This has been a iterative process on our end too, where we've been trying to make sure that everybody has all the information that they need by these due dates. So, and then also, so taking a look at the results of your assessment and maybe just analyzing what you think that means in terms of the trends for your organization, asking questions within your organization to see if everybody's on the same page about the results of that assessment, and then be ready to bring those, have those at front of mind, the results of that assessment, as you come to a meeting on October 20th, because that assessment will help us to tailor and support you in developing a stretch project in the next couple of months and throughout the day on October 20th. So our kickoff workshop in Seattle is October 20th. It's at the Hilton Seattle Airport and Conference Center. And Julia, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
No, the meeting will take place starting at about 8:30 and go until 4:30.
Perfect. Wanted to make sure that folks are linked up to the hub. So there's a link here on this slide, which you know, we'll make sure that folks have when we send. We'll make sure that everybody has access to this as well. And these slides will be able to be available on the hub. Other important dates, our first webinar will be held Wednesday, November 15th. We will have a follow-up webinar on Friday, December 15th. And then webinar number 4 will be held on January 17th. Any questions going forward after this webinar, please feel free to reach out to Joan Miller at the Washington Council. And other than that, if there's no questions that emerged here, we are really, really looking forward to seeing you guys next week.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it. Talk to you guys soon.